Good day, all, and welcome to another fine episode of Outside the Margins with Ronny and Chris, and special guest today, Cory Love. Welcome, everybody.
Hey, Cole.
Are you there, buddy? You can unmute your mic now. Let's see.
Hey, how you guys doing?
We're great.
Great in Aussie land.
Thanks for having me on the show. I really appreciate it.
Our pleasure. So, we might start with a bit of your history, Cole.
Okay. Well, I actually got a pretty interesting story. It's interesting now that the hard part is, of course, finished. When I was 10 years old, I ended up getting a pretty serious car accident with my little brother and my grandma. And in the car accident, I ended up suffering from a severe brain injury. And my little brother actually had his whole right side of his body paralyzed, and he had a pretty severe brain injury as well. So it was a pretty tremendous accident. And at the time of the accident, that's when we actually both had our first out of body experience. And I was up outside of the vehicle, and I was looking down, wondering what happened and if I was going to be able to get back. And I kind of wasn't sure where I was. And then I had this person come up and it was almost like sit down, but it was like sitting down in the air above the car. It was kind of a weird sensation. And, he kind of just gave me some reassurance, like, oh, don't worry about it, you'll be back. And next thing you know, I woke up in the hospital, getting stitches and stuff. So it wasn't too big of a near-death experience. After that, after the car accident, my brain was actually bleeding, so I was really lucky to be alive. And I think it was, I recovered great. I wasn't emotional. I didn't have a hard time. My little brother, his whole right side of his body was paralyzed, and he was kind of like my best friend. So that kind of really shifted, but I was never really upset about that. And my parents really didn't know how I was handling anything because I didn't talk about it. And so they tried taking me to a counselor, and she asked me some questions, and I guess I kind of flipped out on her. And, I kind of just stormed out of there, and I was like, I'm not going there again. It's like, I don't have any problems from the car accident. And it was about 4 years after the accident, I started to realize that I couldn't remember anything before the car accident, because people would ask me questions. I'd be like, I don't know, I'm not really sure why you asking me this. And so I started looking at photographs and picture albums, that my mom made of us when we were kids, and I didn't recognize any of the pictures. I mean, I saw myself there, but there was no emotional attachment. And I started freaking out because I realized I couldn't remember anything from before the accident. And, it started making sense why, my family was kind of concerned about me because, I didn't have any problems after the accident because I really didn't remember what life was like before it. And so I wasn't reacting. I didn't have a problem with the way that my brother was compared to before because my brain didn't really know the difference. And so I was just kind of just observing and watching everything. And so my brain started my brain started going even worse after that. And because it would recognize that it doesn't know where it is anymore. And I realized that my short-term memory was about 3 to 5 days, and I couldn't remember anything, within about 3 to 5 days. Before that, if somebody else brought it up, I could recall it, but on my own, I couldn't. So my brain started freaking out and essentially attacking itself. And
a couple of quick questions, Cory. Did your parents and the ones close to you notice any difference in your personality or anything to do with you after the accident compared to before?
Oh, yeah, I was actually a completely different kid. Made all new friends, didn't talk to any of my old friends after that. I was very, very different. But I didn't know I was different.
I guess it was a sort of like a state of amnesia, really.
Yeah. Yeah, and that was actually just the start of it. So about 4.5 years after the car accident, my brain started to attack itself as a result of no memory, and I'd go into these phases where my brain couldn't recognize anything or anybody. And like even my parents or my brothers or my girlfriend, my brain didn't recognize them. It was like my memory, like all of my memory would just go in the blink, and I didn't know where they were, who anyone was or where I was. And it didn't matter where I was. When my brain went into this, my body would automatically start, like, it would drop to the floor and kind of scuttle back into the corner like a scared dog.
Yeah, that's. I was going to just before you said that, I was going to say that that's a fear state, really. That you
Yeah, it was like my body completely traumatized, and it was like all the higher regions of my brain just completely shut down, and I went literally into an animalistic state, and I couldn't speak English or anything, and my body would make noises like growling noises, and if someone came to come close, my hands would shoot out like claws and try to claw them, and it was really
You're
weird.
in survival mode, yeah.
But the interesting thing is, I'm actually, I'm kind of almost like out of body watching my body do this, but I have no control over what's even going on in my body. But I don't even know what's what, because I'm just kind of observing it happen. And it's kind of weird, but it happened, it started happening like every 5 days. So it was an actual cycle, and I started being able to learn when it was going to happen. And if I knew it was going to happen during the daytime, when I was at school, I'd skip class and I'd like go out to like an alley or something like that, something where I was like away from everybody, cause it took sometimes an hour or two to play out. And the scary thing was it just kept getting stronger. And soon my body started going into these seizures after it would do that, like kind of be in the corner, and it would go into these seizures. And my body would just shake for like a half an hour. It would just shake, and it would get freezing cold. And next thing you know, my senses would start shutting off, and then my body would move into a state of paralysis. And all of a sudden, I couldn't see anything. I could hear people talking, but I couldn't make out any of the words that they're saying, and I couldn't even lift my arm or my hand up or anything. And my body would shut down, and I'd feel my like lungs starting to give out, and all of a sudden, I'd just lose consciousness. And I remember the first night that this happened. It was at nighttime, and I was in my bedroom, and and it was the first time I lost consciousness. I was really scared because my lungs were shutting down. I was like, oh my God, I'm dying. This is so freaking scary. This is it. And then all of a sudden my eyes opened, and I felt like this trickle of liquid coming in through my head into my body. And, all of a sudden I feel myself like just going into this like totally bliss, peaceful state, and I could feel my body, like just everything in my body completely relaxing, but I could start to feel my body, and next thing you know, I'm able to move my arm and lift my arm again, because, I was in that paralyzed state. And all of a sudden my whole body's like, it feels like it's light, and it feels like I'm full of helium, and my arms are moving like high speed, and my eyes are turning on, and there's like color all over the room. And, inside my head, I can look out my window, but I can see out through the whole wall, and I can see outside, and all of a sudden this grid pattern starts forming, and life all of a sudden starts to become alive, and I can hear it communicating. I don't know what it's saying, but I can hear the communication happening. And, that was one of the first times I ever felt alive in my life. And, the first time it happened didn't last very long. That was about it. And then all of a sudden the energy started to subside, and my senses started to dull back to where they are, typically, on a typical day. And I was like, whoa, what the hell was that place? I was like freaking out.
Did it feel like you were sort of like maybe downloading a sequence of vibrational energy? Maybe?
At the time, I didn't know what happened, because I'd never ever experienced anything like that before. And, but it was like my body just filled up with energy, and it just turned on. It came alive, and I realized that there's so much to the body that we don't understand. And, it was almost like now I describe it as like an in-body experience, because I don't think we're actually all the way in. Like, our spirit isn't all the way inside of our body. Even just when we get born, it's like we're still working, as we grow up, to be able to integrate and bring more of our spirit into our body, more of this energy. And I think that's kind of what happened, was that my whole body just let go in this state of paralysis. And next thing you know, there was energy, and it just started flowing through my whole body, and it came alive. So yeah, I'd kind of say it was more like an in-body experience, than an out-of-body one.
That's the DMT part of it. When did you actually figure out and put the two together that that's probably what it was?
Well, by that time, I think I was just turning 15 by the time that first one started. And it only lasted like an hour and a half or something. It wasn't very long. And
probably pretty typical for a DMT type experience. They usually call it like the lunchtime trip, half an hour.
Yeah.
And it's done, yeah.
Well, the next day my brain was like mush though, because I couldn't focus. I couldn't concentrate. I just kind of like laid there. Like my brain was just mush inside, and it felt like mush inside from what I just gone through. So it was like even though in the moment when it happened, it was afterwards, it was a really draining experience. But I used to actually get drained like that after those seizures and stuff anyways, but I wouldn't get that real high boost of energy come through. So that first time that happened, I was like, what is this? What's going, I was like, what's happening to me? I'm just kind of freaking out. So, but this cycle happened every 5 days for approximately 5 years, up to the time where I essentially almost turned 20. And they kept getting longer. They eventually ended up lasting anywhere from 8 to 12 hours. And it was every time was different. Sometimes I'd actually go out of body, and other times it would be in body, and my senses would activate and turn on. So it's So it was pretty intense. The longest one that ever happened was the second last one that I had, and that one was actually was 4 days just in that peak space, and then it took about it's about 12 days to completely come down from where I could actually function. I think it was like my 8th or 9th day that I could actually finally drive again. So that was a really intense one, but it didn't actually happen. It actually didn't happen for I think like 2.5 months or something. So there was like this huge buildup. And that was the second last one that I ever had. And then my last one was kind of almost like a goodbye. They kicked me out of there. They said, you're not coming back. And they'd already given me technology to start fixing my brain. And so when they kicked me out of there, that was essentially once the technology was built. And they said their goodbyes, and they said I'd see them again, once I completed what they gave me to do.
Which is that where you started with Sacred G?
No, it was actually before Sacred G technology. This was another type, just using it was using a combination of lights and sound and magnets and electromagnetic fields and essential oils. And it was kind of like this huge bed with about 80 different lights shining on the body. And so we go and lay inside this bed, and it started healing our body, and we ended up actually getting about 50% use back in my brother's arm that had been paralyzed for 10 years. I started being able to function, a lot better. And once I started laying in this bed, every day, then, this cycle stopped happening. And so it was fixing my brain. So it was,
sounds like an awesome machine, dude.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's where actually Sacred G came out of, because I was looking for more stable forms of energy that I could increase and amplify the amount of energy. Because in all honesty, I just want to get back there all the time.
You're familiar with a dude named Joe Rogan?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you heard him talk about his sensory deprivation tank experiences that he equates very, very similarly to the DMT trips that he's had. He reckons he's better at it. Yeah, Joe's a great guy. We actually seen him do the stand-up comedy a few times, and he's got some. He's funny, isn't he? He's got some G. We hooked him up for G, and awesome. Yeah, he's definitely a really amazing person. Sorry, now where were we? We're up to the point where I was going to ask you. Yeah, I had the feeling when you mentioned your brother first. I wasn't aware of him previously to that, but I had a feeling that, like you, he's got a lot better than he was from when he first came out of the car accident, right? Yeah, he's actually doing pretty good now. He went through a really hard time because he completely changed too. And being paralyzed, he couldn't keep up with his friends anymore, and he had to relearn everything over. So he had to relearn how to do like English and math and all the basic stuff that he learned in school. He had to completely relearn everything. But he was only 7, so he only lost really a few years. But still, that's a really important few years, and it's a lot of the, inside those memories that he lost as well. That's where you have all like your social
how to act in social situations. You learn that stuff when you're really young. And so when you lose access to those parts of your memory, you lose access to also a lot of the social skills and, how to interact with people. And so your confidence levels drop, considerably. And we actually...
It also works into your advantage a little bit later in life, where you explained that you don't have to worry about that baggage that was developed during that time either, right?
Yeah, you don't. Well, until you get those memories back, and then all of a sudden you got like a face full.
I see.
Of baggage.
So do you feel that you've regained most of what you'd lost?
Yeah, I'm not back 100%. There's definitely some parts of my brain, that are still a little out, and I'm always working on figuring out ways to advance more technology or new techniques to kind of tweak some of the areas. And but yeah, I think my most people who actually know me really well say that my brain is definitely way beyond the average person. Because I ended up actually developing a whole new memory system for my brain. So my brain kind of operates very different than most people. And it was some of the stuff that I got taught. When I was having these high energy experiences, was how memory works, but not just memory is like personal memory, but how memory is stored in the universe. So it's like how all the data and information is stored everywhere, and how it's accessed and retrieved, and how it runs off essentially like almost like logic consciousness systems.
Is that what you would equate with what some people would call maybe the Akashic records or Akashic records?
Yeah, you definitely call it that. That's actually one of the big goals. There's a space, and we talk about this with some of the life after death videos. There's our side right here where it's got 3 space dimensions and 1 time dimension, and the time is actually what adds structure and form to everything. If it's just 3 space dimensions, you don't have that actual structure because you don't have all the loops and the rhythms, and it's kind of almost like a huge data catalog. And then we got the other side, which is a spiritual side or a spirit body, but it runs off of a world just like this. And that also has 3 space dimensions and 1 time dimension. And when people have a near-death experience, they go into the light, and next thing you know, if you study and read about them, they go into almost like this holographic reality where their imagination becomes the creator. And, it's all formulated from their own thoughts and their own memories and their own desires and passions and also their fears as well. And it's a holographic reality. So it's the space that's in between the 2 worlds. And so that space right there has 3 space dimensions, but it does not have a time dimension. So when you talk to people who've had a near-death experience, they'll tell you, I don't know, I could have been in there for weeks or days or hours, but it was really only like 1 minute Earth time, because there's there's not the time dimension there, so time is extremely distorted in that space. So that's actually the same space that you go to, because
when you're lucid dreaming.
Yeah, lucid dreaming. It's also the same space you go to when, if you smoke DMT, you'll go directly into that space, because DMT and near-death experiences are really the same stuff. It's just your body's inducing the naturally produced DMT, which ejects you out of your body. Or, when you smoke it, the DMT goes inside and it sucks up to your brain and it puts you out of body. But that's the actual space that you go into. And, science fiction, people call it hyperspace because it's the place where, you can actually travel to any point in the universe and you can do it essentially instantly. So it's faster than light travel, and that's where all your warps and everything all happen. But it's still considered just an actual theoretical space. But once you start understanding, what happens, after death and this space that you go through, it's like a portal. That's what exists there. So that's that.
Would that tie in with Bert's concept with his quantum jumping?
Yeah, you could definitely tie it in with that. Yeah, absolutely. And there's a lot of different ways to access this space, and what really comes down to is it literally is a space built off imagination. And in order to go into that space, you need to activate senses to function there. And so there's a system of higher senses inside the human brain. So there are actually senses that are possible. So one of the easiest ways that I've figured out how to explain this stuff is, we have our own individuality, and we've got our five senses, touch, taste, sight, smell, and hearing. And those are our five basic senses that give us our individual experience here. And so then we also have a collective state that we have access to as well. And a collective state also has five senses, but they're five higher senses. And because it's a collective state, the sense of touch all of a sudden goes to, oh, wow, I can actually feel what's going on inside your body. Just by walking by you, I can feel this in my stomach, or I can feel this in my knee, and I can pick up what's going on in your body because I have that collective sense of touch open. Or the collective sense of hearing, all of a sudden you'll actually hear coaching systems inside your brain, or you hear the communication that's taking place between your body and another person's body, underneath the surface while you're both having an individual verbal conversation. So all the higher senses can really just be summed up as actual collective senses where you're all one person. There's not those individual barriers or limits. And so when you unlock those higher senses, that's what gives you the ability when you're in this hyperspace to create and detect your imagination's reality, I guess you'd say.
Would you say that the practice of like remote viewing is like tapping into one of those senses?
Mm-hmm. Well, here's the neat thing. There's actually, I was talking about there's, you can go out of body or you can go into the body. Well, going into the body is very different because typically when you have a really traumatic experience, there's a surge of energy that hits the body, and that surge of energy is picked up through your nervous system and taken up into your brain. And when you have too much amplitude in your neurons, they actually start spiking gamma levels, and gamma is what instructs a neuron to produce dimethyltryptamine. And so then dimethyltryptamine is released as a neurotransmitter into the brain, and as soon as you get enough of that, it'll pick you up and take you out of your body, which is one direction that DMT works. Now, a second direction, if you can generate enough energy inside your brain where it's actually a brainwave cycle where you go from beta, alpha, theta, delta to a second beta. And if you complete this circuit, your brain will naturally produce a gamma wave because you completed this circuit. And in turn, it will actually release dimethyltryptamine, but instead of taking you up and out of your body, it actually brings you down and into your body, which activates the higher senses that are capable inside the human body. So you essentially learn that there's a whole new operating system that the human body has, and that's where you'd be doing more of the remote viewing, because you use the body senses and how this specific reality is created in our world to be able to travel to different places on our planet looking for certain pieces of information, which is what remote viewing is. So it's a different, it's the same, but it's the different flow. So one, you're actually coming into the body and using the body's mechanics and the body's foundation for this reality. And then in hyperspace, you're actually going up and out of the body, and you exist inside your own imagination.
Okay, because when I do it, I almost take myself rather than in or out. It's kind of like a sideways, but it's hard to explain like that. But I find that I do it with my eyes wide open, so that there's no imagining taking place.
Yeah.
And it's like the very first thing that you get, like almost instantly, rather than thinking on further than that point. That works really well, and it's usually while you're doing something else. Completely different, like with your hands, and not really paying attention to what it is, and I just take myself sideways, and it's almost like I have a remote video with hearing and seeing at the same time.
I like that. That's really good.
Yeah.
some of the visual techniques, because I mean, you're doing it with your eyes open, so you're staying locked into this reality, which actually really helps. And you know, a lot of times when I do energy work with other people and I'm scanning their body, I don't close my eyes. I keep them open, even though I'm not really looking out of my eyes. I keep them open.
Yeah, that's how it is. Yep.
Yeah, and there's a really cool exercise that you can do to train your eyes like that. I mean, you've already naturally have your eyes trained like that, but there's a really cool exercise, and all you need is another person, and you basically, you know, you have your heads about a foot away from each other, and you stare at their eyes and they stare at your eyes, and once you kind of like look past their head, instead of them having 2 eyes, they'll end up having 4 eyes. And you can line the 2 center eyes up at the same time, and all of a sudden you'll see that person now has 3 eyes. And once you get it lined up, which is kind of like a balancing, then what you do is you focus in. So the first step is to let go, and when you let go, instead of 2 eyes, you look past them and you see 4 eyes. And then you balance it, and when you balance it, the 4 eyes turn into 3 because they kind of blend together, you know, the 2 middle ones. And then the third step is to focus into that middle third eye, and the other 2 eyes and everything else will disappear, and all you'll see is actually one single eye, and their face will morph as well. So it kind of just looks like a big blob of skin with like 1 eye, you know. And then you lock onto that eye, and you try and keep that eye. And as soon as you get it, you know, the first time, you get so excited that instantly you lose it, you know, because you have to really stay like focused and stable. But that's the training that you can do to you know, to unlock that your own third eye and that internal vision. Yeah, it's a really powerful technique.
That's awesome. It reminds me of one that I used to practice with a hematite sphere. And, of course, it was like a mirror, so you'd be looking into your own eyes. And I would go through this, the morphing thing that you were talking about, and it would be how I looked in all of my past lives, and it would just morph from one to another, back and forth, all through them. And it lasted for, I don't know, 20 or 30 different cycles of how I looked. And yeah, that's a similar sort of thing, I think.
Oh, and your face would morph into
oh yeah.
Oh yeah, that's really cool. And that was with hematite, hey?
Yeah, like a polished globe. It's like it's really shiny. Yeah, it's cool.
How big was it?
About the size of a bit smaller than a tennis ball, bit bigger than a golf ball.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And I suppose it's like a crystal gazing type of technique, but it's not like looking into a clear or smoky quartz or anything like that, because it's a reflection of yourself at the time. But yeah, being able to go into that state where everything just started changing and morphing. But I knew it was me, and it was like, it went back a long time.
Well, that happens too when you're doing that, you know, when you're looking at the other person. A lot of times all of a sudden you're like, you know, they change into your mom or your dad or you know, somebody you dated and asked, and definitely you go through all those memory systems for sure. That's cool though. I've never done it with a crystal like that. It gets me excited.
Oh, nice. I like that.
Well, we know what you're doing after the show.
Well, and that's you know, when my body would surge with energy, and you know, my eyes would go through an activation process. You know, and the first layer was you know, everything just started waving. All the walls, the floor, the ceiling, everything just started waving like I was in the ocean. And it was basically like my brain.
Is your body shaking at this point?
No, everything's like completely like calm, and like my body's just full of energy. And then after the waving, everything turns into these tiny little dots, and the dots eventually evolve into numbers and letters, and then the numbers and letters will scroll around everything, and then they'll start depicting almost like little images or little graphics. You know, so it'll be like a little sword or a little pyramid that repeats, but it repeats everywhere. And so it's the exact same kind of like little graphic that repeats everywhere, and everything's made up of this exact same look. You know, a very common one is an eye, and everywhere you look, there's like eyes looking back at you. And then after that, eventually it evolves into you know, the little graphics will start rotating, so there's a whole bunch of different ones, and then all of a sudden there's faces, and then the faces will rotate and shift as well. And once you kind of complete that process, the faces will actually take on bodies, and then the bodies will, with enough energy, the bodies will actually start moving and interacting with you, and then the senses of those bodies will activate so they can actually speak to you and talk to you, and then you're immersed in this completely totally reality that you're looking at with your eyes, and you're like staring at the wall and you can see into it, and there's a whole civilization in the wall, and people come up and talk to you, and some of them can once they've got everything activated, they'll wave at you to come here, and all of a sudden you feel your eyes close, and you see them with your eyes closed, and they take you into another world or into another reality, and basically just teach you something. They want to show you something. But you go through.
That's classic. That's awesome. Now I know that you read the Rick Strassman book, because I've read it myself. A lot of those people that did the experiments with him explained that their trip that they had involved quite often carnivals and clown faces and things like that. And it also brings to mind, Freeman Jack just brought up in the chat room about a Salvia Divinorum trip being something which only lasts for a very short while, but you seem like you could be away for 10 years at times. Have you experienced with that substance?
I don't actually have much experience with Salvia at all. But yeah, anything that has those real time distortions is when you're going into that hyperspace. And the cool part, when you go in there, depending on the actual compounds that you use to get in there, or combined with your own personal development and what higher senses you've unlocked, it'll kind of shapes your reality. For what you experience in that space.
Well, I've experienced it on LSD a few times, some very similar sort of experiences like that definitely, and back to primal self as well. Quite strongly.
Well, one of the really cool things that I figured out about this space, because I spent a lot of time there, it was it's like over 1,000 hours Earth time, and you can literally go through a 20-year life cycle within about 15 minutes, in that space. So, I was in there for a really long time, and it was very stable because my brain was actually producing the stuff to get there. It wasn't really like an external injection or, smoking something externally. It was my own brain's chemistry that would put me there. And so it was definitely a lot more stable than anything that I've ever experienced, from an external source. And one of the things that I figured out was, every time that we have a conflict or a problem in our life, it has a charge, like an emotional charge. We react to it. And this reaction inside that charge, so it's almost like you got a positive and a negative that oscillate around each other. But in the center of this is a balance, but it's also a piece of information. And so what I learned was the body will never ever supply you with a problem if it doesn't, without the actual solution sitting inside the middle of that charge. So what I kind of figured out was I could take any type of problem or issue that I had and use a couple techniques to get rid of that emotional charge around it. And it would open up a piece of information. That information would come into my conscious awareness, and I'd learn something new. And so I realized, well, the information that is out in the world, this didn't actually come from out in the world. It came from inside the body. And I started, figuring out these extraction models that the brain and the body use to pull information out of this Akashic records, but I could start to access it inside this space. So what started to happen was I trained my brain on how to start converting these emotional charges into information automatically. And even though I had access to the information, it wasn't really usable. And there was another system that I figured out how to do, and that's to activate this council system. And the council system ended up showing up as other people inside this hyperspace, except the information that they held, it wasn't just information that they held, it was information that was actually being unlocked from the process of processing emotional charges and then unlocking new pieces of information, and these faces would store it and teach it to me, and show me what it was. So when you're in a high energy state like that and your brain can process everything so quickly, as soon as you find some type of conflict inside yourself and you run these cycles through, next thing you know, you have somebody pop up and they're like teaching you all the solutions and how it works, and they're giving you like this full out like 3D animation of what's happening. And what I realized was these exact same beings, I kind of always looked at them as they were like, the gods and goddesses. And you hear about that in, a lot of Egyptian and Roman and, Mayan legend and culture. You hear about the gods and goddesses. So I was always like, oh, these are the guys they're talking about. But then I started once I started understanding the mechanics of this space, I realized, well, it's actually my brain that's processing these charges, unlocking the new information, then generating these people. And I look at them like they're so brilliant and intelligent and so full of light because they have something that I don't have. And so when I look up to them like that and I'm in awe, all they got to do is go, hey, check this out. And my body's so open and receptive to receiving it. And I realized it was an actual, it was a whole mechanism that was happening inside my own body, and it was projecting it outward. And, it gave me this completely different understanding of what the actual gods and goddesses are, and how this reality works inside this hyperspace, so we could eventually figure out how to harness it and walk other people into these same spaces.
Dude, are you sure that these gods and goddesses are good beings rather than possibly not?
Well, I mean, when you get into the advanced stages and your brain's just automatically generating the charges, ones that still have an emotional charge show up as actual demons. They got horns, they look scary, they're big monsters, but and at first, you get scared because you're like, oh my God, it's like a horror movie come true. And, after a little bit, you realize, oh, okay, well, they're just storing an actual charge, and the charge is just chaos, and it's a battle between opposition, between good and evil. And, you always want to slay the monster, but you don't want to slay the monster because as soon as you do, you're choosing a positive charge, and the monster's a negative charge. And as soon as you're like, you know what, I'm not playing that stupid game. I just want the truth that's in the middle. I want that neutron. I want the boost in consciousness and intelligence. And as soon as you do that, the faces automatically morph, and they switch into into more I don't know, I guess you'd say like a noble face, and you'll watch their faces completely morph, and all of a sudden they're in a noble face, and they smile at you, and they're like, oh, okay, cool, well, check this out. And next thing you know, they're teaching you some stuff. So yeah, when you're in this hyperspace, and you actually, they're not as often, they're a lot more rare, but you can hear people who've gone through near-death experiences where everything went to hell, But it's that hyperspace generating your reality based off your fears. And then your fears come to life because it is an imaginary state where your fears, but also your passions and your dreams all come alive. And that's part of the training inside that space, is learning how to, focus when you do have some negative charges. Instead of being scared of them, you learn how to convert them. And, you learn how to step into your own mastership and harness your own brain and your own focus and intent. But yeah, it's still a learning curve, though.
That's cool.
Is this where you bring in what is labeled law of attraction?
Yeah, law of attraction. Yeah, where you focus on is what you attract. Anybody who studies the law of attraction eventually realizes that there's more to it and there's more depth. And the more depth is, usually in order to attract something or to create something in your life, there's a follow-up and an actual action step that has to be done. And that's usually what's not taught in the law of attraction. It's more about, focus on what you want, meditate, see it in the mirror, tell yourself that you are it. But, if you don't take that action, you don't integrate it into your physical body. And if you don't integrate it into the body, you don't actually ever become it, And then, if you watch people who really went deep into, the law of attraction and a lot of the principles but didn't take any actions, you can start to see an actual, mask develop on their faces where they're not really connecting with reality and they're more caught up in almost a delusion of what they could be, but not taking the actions to really complete the process. So when you study the actual neurology of the brain, the cerebellum, which is responsible for motion and movement, consists of approximately 50% of the neurons inside the brain, yet only occupies 10% of the space of the brain, which means that the other 90% of your brain can make all the thoughts that it wants, talk all it likes, generate all the emotion that it wants to, get the body chemistry all tuned in to create the life that you're looking for. But if you don't take that final action, which is the cerebellum, and that's what preps that energy to, move down through the nervous system and into your muscles and integrate into who you are. If you don't take that last step with the cerebellum, it will override the cerebellum, or it will override everything else in the brain and basically say, well, yeah, you want all this stuff, but you didn't take your action step. And because you didn't take your action step, you didn't complete the process. And so the cerebellum literally has the capability to override everything inside the brain. But when you understand this, you can also go, wow, I'm really scared to do this. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm kind of, I'm freaking out. I don't have any social support. I don't have anybody telling me what's going on. But I can go do this anyways. And as soon as I go do this, the body will help help me learn. I'll overcome this. And so that's what goes along with a lot of the really large law of attraction seminars, is that they do a lot of personal development, and they do different types of experiences where you have to trust. And you have to take a certain action even though you don't know what's going to happen, but you have to take this action in order to create trust. And Anthony Robbins does that with the fire walk. That's a prime example, where he builds you up all night, the whole first day, and then you go out and do a fire walk. And the fire walk only takes a couple seconds. They're just baby steps. But it's the whole build up and then going, okay, let's take an action. Let's make it happen. And you just overcome your fears. You don't understand it. You don't know it. Your brain doesn't know it until you actually do it. Once you do it, you're like, oh, wow. That wasn't so hard after all. And so there's that really big shift. And that's what actions are usually about. It's taking whatever step that you know how to do, and you take that step. And then you wait. And when you wait, your brain will automatically give you the next step to take. And then you go take that step, and your brain will give you the next one. So it's literally like, it's like color by the numbers. You have to go step by step by step. And the brain will not give you instructions for how to complete the whole process. It only gives you instructions to complete the next step. And then the next step, and then the next step. So once you understand that, then you can go take action. So a lot of people with law of attraction, they'll be like, okay, what am I going to do? Well, I'm going to be a famous speaker. So first I need to write a book. Okay, what am I going to write a book about? And they kind of get a couple ideas for what they want to write a book about, and they haven't written a book, but all of a sudden in their brain they're already doing like book signings, and they're out speaking, and they're getting booked, and they're on radio shows and TV shows, which is really good. It builds that momentum, and it builds that passion and energy, and you're building in an end goal. But then all of a sudden something really interesting happens. It comes down to actually writing the book, and all of a sudden that emotion, that passion of like being on TV shows disappears. And it's disappearing because it's converting from an emotional charge into information that can make it a reality. But when people lose that emotional charge, because it's converting into information, they lose that passion. And a lot of times people quit because they're more high off that emotional passion rather than actually, converting it into the information, doing the work, writing the book, making it happen, building the website, trying to get publishers, and the whole process. So a lot of people I find get kind of stuck at that emotional passion because they build up their dreams and expectations of how everything's going to be so much. But in the meantime, they're forgetting to just take some of the basic, simple steps to get stuff started.
Well, thoughts do become things, but yes, you're right. If you don't act on those thoughts, they never become things.
Yeah, and it's cool, because once you understand like the neurology of the brain, and the cerebellum contains 50% of the neurons, your cerebellum, which is your action, can override any of your thoughts or emotions or anything. So I kind of noticed that that's really the major thing that's left out of the law of attraction, but it's also like the most important thing, because without action, nothing happens, nothing changes.
Yeah, it just stays all in your mind.
Mm-hmm.
So, I was recapping on your full spectrum vibration and the way you deliver, and then that also that Starseed broadcast was really cool, and the you actually do a breath, a G breath. Yeah, can you explain that?
Yeah, we have this thing called a G breath, and what we've figured out was that breath is linked in with brain waves. And so when you do certain types of breathing sequences, it will, it can entrain your brain into a specific brain wave, and it can also convert, brain waves and kind of essentially like stress and chaos that's in your mind, and it can convert it into gamma waves, which generates dimethyltryptamine. And once you start doing these breathing sequences, you can find that you're really actually in control of your own state at all given times. And if you don't like the state that you're in, you can simply change it by doing a breathing sequence. So that's what the G breath is. And if you like, we can actually run through a G breath, and you'll be able to feel it. It only takes about 2 or 3 minutes.
Yeah, sure. I'd love to.
Okay. Well, I'll just tell you which breath to do. It's only 13 breaths. And you've probably heard before, if you're angry, before you do anything, take 10 deep breaths. I'm not sure if you guys have ever done that, but, it doesn't really work for me. But I knew there was something to it, because I understood the sequence with breathing and brain waves. So this one is 13 breaths, and you're going to be breathing in through your mouth and out through your mouth, or into your mouth and out through your nose. So I'll walk you through each of the breaths. And when you're doing it, just take large full breaths. Don't just kind of do like a half breath, because that's not enough energy, and it's not going to build enough energy in your brain or enough momentum to really get these cycles moving and kind of blast that energy through your neurons, so you get that gamma production. So it's 13 breaths, and what we're going to do is just start off by breathing in through our mouth first. So breathing in and out through your mouth, in through your mouth, and out through your nose. In through your nose, out through your nose, in through your nose, and out through your mouth. In through your mouth, and out through your mouth, in through your mouth, and out through your nose. In through your nose, and out through your nose, in through your nose, and out through your mouth. In through your mouth, out through your mouth, in through your mouth, and out through your nose. In through your nose, out through your nose, in through your nose, and out through your mouth. And last one, in through your mouth, and out through your mouth.
Oh.
So you'll notice you might be a little lightheaded right now, which is it's a part of it. And that's actually what you're looking for is the lightheaded sensation. And it happens because as we're breathing, it's building up energy and pressure. And so as soon as your defenses can't hold that pressure back anymore, you get lightheaded. So it pushes that energy through, and it creates that flow. And that's what happens.
I feel like I just did some NOS.
Oh yeah,
I haven't got the echo yet, but yeah, it's coming.
I feel like I'm almost floating on top of the lounge in my lotus position.
Nice and tingly all over. Yeah.
So after you do them a few times, even with it's even stronger when you do it with a group of people. So, you got 10 or 15 people in a room and you're doing these G breaths, and, after you do it like 3 or 4 times, all of a sudden everybody's having huge laugh attacks. Like they can't stop laughing. And, you just automatically start blissing out because, not only do you have your own gamma and dimethyltryptamine that's being released, but everybody around you is. And that's how dimethyltryptamine works, is that it starts opening up the connections to the other bodies in your environment. So all of a sudden, all these people around you are all connecting to this space, and the energy starts to flow and transfer between all of you. And next thing you know, you're kind of like all laughing and kind of hitting this blissful state. It's really fun.
Do you combine it with like dancing, like with music at the same time, like doing those G breaths as part of your like just normal everyday breathing?
Yeah, I actually do it anytime I'm transitioning. So if I'm if I'm working on a computer, I'm in like one zone, and then if all of a sudden I got to go out for dinner, my brain's still on the computer. And, I've driven all the way to the restaurant, and I'm ready to go in and meet and hang out with some other people, and my brain's still on the computer. So the G-breath changes that right away. It kind of like closes down what you were doing and opens you up for the next thing. So it's a really amazing transitional tool for sure.
Awesome. I'm going to start practicing it.
Mm-hmm. This really incredible I am sequence. And it's on our website. And so when you combine that with, for instance, if you push on a pressure point on your body, it will it hurts. But when it hurts, we don't really know why it hurts. So when you push on that pressure or healing energy, and you get lightheaded, and then as the lightheaded sensation's wearing off, your brain is actually taking this new charge or this new programming, and it's putting it down into that pressure point. So that way, when you go in and push on the pressure point, if it hurt like at a 9 before, after you do a G breath, it might hurt at like a 5. And then, you let it sit for a moment, and then you push in and you make it hurt again, but you got to push in even deeper this time. And, you do the G breath and in the lightheaded sensation wears off, and you go in and push, and now the pain's at like a 2. So yeah, you can do that with all pain on your body. It's really fast. Long-term pain, people are like, oh my God, my leg hurts so bad I can barely walk for like the last 6 months, and like 2 cycles, and they're like, oh my God, my leg doesn't hurt anymore. What is this? So yeah, it's really powerful and really easy to do for pain.
Yeah, I guess that's why we go through breathing when going through labor, us women. So I'm assuming that this technique has been around for a long time for pain, but the 13s, yeah, as you said, most people say breathe in 10 times, but the 13 I'm definitely going to experiment with.
Yeah, and it's the cycle. And, there's some really cool stuff that we've been learning, which is also, you were talking about, can you use this with dancing or anything else throughout the day? And we've actually developed a bunch of models for, ways that you actually work out and train your body. And depending on how you're breathing when you're doing the workout, determines what type of muscle fiber that you're actually going to produce. So a lot of times with yoga here in the United States, people are always breathing in through their nose and out through their nose. And breathing in through your nose and out through your nose is linked in with a theta brainwave. And theta brainwave, like the muscle filaments that are produced when you're breathing in this way, it's actually one of the most unstable forms of muscle, so it deteriorates the fastest. But at the same time, it's also the most flexible muscle. Whereas bodybuilders here, are usually breathing in through their mouth and out through their mouth, which is associated with a beta brainwave. And that's actually the strongest and most durable muscle, but it's not flexible. So that muscle really tightens up and it kind of becomes stuck in its own way. And, if you got too much of this beta muscle, depending on how your muscles are actually trained in your body, that those open up receptors. So when your eyes are, watching an experience happen in front of you, if the majority of your muscle fibers are programmed into a theta brainwave state, then the way that you're going to receive the information from the experience that's happening in front of you is going to be based mainly on a theta state. Whereas a bodybuilder who's got mostly beta muscle will be watching more of the motions and kind of what's happening on a more simple level, but missing some of the really complex intricacies that you'd pick up on a theta level. So the way that you've actually trained your muscle fibers determines the way that your actual sense receptors pick up information.
I know when if I'm in a fearful situation or even slightly feeling of anger, and I do this breathing through my mouth with huge big breaths, it also activates adrenaline.
Oh yeah. Mouth will definitely activate adrenaline. Yeah, that's that's linked up to adrenaline for sure.
Which also, strangely enough, is actually where I've had some of my most powerful activations is after extreme adrenaline rushes, and then meditating and going, absolutely out of body and out of reality and out of dimension as well, and into actually a dream state where it was a 3-dream tier of going from one dream to another dream into another dream into this space, and then to get back out again, waking up 3 times as well.
Well, some of the stuff that we've been doing with like some of the really advanced neurochemistry and how to train your brain and your body to increase productions of neurotransmitters. Like for some of the weightlifting and bodybuilding, there's this like energy surge that you get when you're lifting weights, and it's that same adrenaline spike. But after you get one, your body's fatigued. It starts to shake afterwards, and it kind of like it sets you off, and your workout is pretty much finished once one of these little energy surges happen. And so we've been doing some research with some bodybuilders. And, training them on how to use the G-breath and these wave breathing techniques to train their muscle fibers. And what they've noticed is they're getting a lot more of the actual like bursts and surges of energy through adrenaline, but they don't get tired after. And they're lasting longer. So the brain is actually stabilizing it. So we're figuring out how to, amplify, these different types of energy surges, with combining the G breath, which is a gamma. So it's it's definitely a really powerful system, and I think the way that it works is we have a collective state, which is really another way of saying gamma, because all brain waves are actually stored inside of a gamma wave, and a gamma can take on the form of any individual brain wave, but at the same time, as soon as you're not focusing on it, it restores itself back to gamma. So it's kind of like this morphing brain wave, and that's kind of like the collective. And then there's the individual state, which is like, you're either in a beta or you're in a theta or you're in a delta, and you're constantly changing from one to another. So if you can access both states and you have a gamma firing, that gamma firing will amplify like a specific brainwave, like a beta, which would be your adrenaline. So when you have both of them firing, your adrenaline levels can spike way higher, but you don't get the actual weaknesses that come with it because you've got that gamma behind it stabilizing it. And so your spike of energy lasts longer. You don't get the shakes afterwards, and you don't get the real big drop that happens either. And it's really from combining them both.
Hey, that brings to mind the Incredible Hulk. He was supposedly hit with gamma blasts in that same sort of a transformation.
No, I just watched that like 2 nights ago too.
Synchronicity. Your other state that you're talking about, the primal one, and the 5-day cycle, even though it's a 5-day cycle rather than a full moon cycle, it reminded me of maybe like where maybe some of the stories of like werewolfism came from.
Yeah, I never thought of that before. Yeah, because that's a 30-day cycle, with the full moon with a werewolf. Yeah, I never thought of that. But that was
that state of animalisticness that's apart from yourself. That it kind of like it sounds like an old legend being aggrandized, if you would.
Well, I think what was cool was once I actually started learning these brainwaves, and it wasn't until like 2005, 2006 that I really started to understand like all the brainwave and neurology science. And but the visions and these high energy experiences had already been finished for like 5 or 6 years. And then I started studying these cycles and these brainwave cycles, and I'm like, oh my god, beta, alpha, theta, delta, and a second beta. That's 5, and that's what triggers when you complete the circuit. That's what triggers a gamma. And I was like, oh my god, because my experiences happen every 5 days, so it must have been linked up with that same brainwave sequence. And I thought that was pretty cool, like after realization.
That is pretty cool, dude. Putting the numbers together with everything. That's great.
Yeah, I like having kind of an understanding. So, one of my big projects was when I went into this hyperspace, they were showing me, blueprints for all types of new technologies and information and systems and, really technical, like schematics too, like actual like building procedures and, how you'd set up a factory to actually manufacture like a specific technology. And, they showed me all these different types of really advanced technology, but something, but I couldn't receive it. So even though I was watching it, it was so fast that I couldn't really extract the details. And even though they were showing me the details, I didn't have any actual receptors in my brain so that I could understand the language of what they were showing me. And then I realized what the actual weakness was of this space is that, you have to have already a level of specialty, a level of intelligence when you go in there, because if you ask a question that you don't have an actual foundation for or a language for, you can't get an answer because you don't have that basic component already set up. And so the extraction of this information takes a really long time. And I was thinking to myself, well, how am I going to become an expert or a specialist in like everything? And that's too much. It's impossible. And so what I ended up figuring out that I wanted to do was identify how to bring a team of people back into this space who are actually all specialists. And that's kind of been my one huge project, after being in there, was identifying the mechanics to take other people back into this space, to walk them through the development models, to do the sensory activation, and have a team that can actually go into the exact same space and extract this data out. So that's always kind of been my own personal goal once I found that this place was possible. And I ended up training for about a year inside this space on how to do that. But to bring it back down into this world and develop the language and the techniques and the procedures and ways to communicate, that all had to be done here. It couldn't be done, in that space. So that's kind of what I've always devoted my life to ever since then. So, the G breath and the sacred G technology, and we have a bunch of videos on the website and courses, and then the activations that actually turn on the senses. Those are all actual components to be able to walk people through into this hyperspace. So it's really cool that I can that we can kind of open it up and start grounding it so that people can enhance that state.
That's so basically what is happening in your life is what you've been building towards for a very long time.
Yeah, it's been like 15 years of like obsession. That's all I do.
So tell us about you were saying earlier when we went on the call, we were on another call about where you're moving into now, your ventures.
Now it's kind of like the whole project's finally coming together. So we've put everything together on how to train the brain and the body to get in and access this space. So we've got we've got courses. One of the biggest things that people have, the obstacles that people have to get into this hyperspace and open up these higher senses, is that they still believe their own individual reality. And they believe in their own individual senses. And they believe in themselves. And the pre-constructed reality that society and religion and their parents and their teachers, have given them. And so that's what actually prevents people from accessing their collective state, which opens up their abilities. And so when you start thinking about, well, how do we let go of our individual self? Well, if you talk to anybody who's into self-development or transforming the body, you'll find that they're open to like anything and everything. And it really doesn't even matter what it is, as long as it's contradictory to our own preconceived notion of reality. Because that's the most important part. As soon as we open ourselves to another concept, we don't have to agree on it. We don't have to solidify ourselves on it. We don't have to make a choice and say, no, it's this way, not that way. We just simply have to open up to the possibility of it. And once we do that, once we let go of our need to, to have to label and control our reality, that's what actually starts opening us up to this quantum state where we can access the collective and these higher senses and higher abilities. So that's what I found is people's really, the biggest challenge. And so what we put together for that is this course called Formula for Truth. And the Formula for Truth does exactly that. It identifies the source of every single conflict that a person can have. And a conflict always happens because, you learn a new piece of information. And as soon as you know one way of this information, someone else is guaranteed to come along and give you this whole different perception. And that different perception, well, that kind of distorts your reality of what you thought it was going to be. And so that's the conflict right there. And people have a choice at that conflict of, am I going to believe in my information and get rid of this person, or am I going to embrace this person and open up to their way of seeing things as well? And as soon as you do that, you open up to that opposite charge. So your charge is typically always the positive one because you're like, I'm right and you're wrong, right? So you got a positive and negative charge there. But as soon as you open up to their method and you embrace them, instead of being a positive and a negative, I'm right, you're wrong, or you're right, I'm wrong, it neutralizes the effect of it. And when you neutralize it, that's that actual key. That's what unlocks the information. And when you open up to two perceptions, your brain automatically will start filling in the in-betweens. Well, if this is possible, if my way is possible and this other way is possible, what about everything in between? And what about everything outside those boundaries that we haven't even actually thought of? And so that's essentially opens you up to possibility. And so the way that this grounds down is, when we become like a professional at something, or when you're talking to a professional, somebody who's been doing the exact same thing in the same industry, for a really long time. A lot of times I just use marketing as a really great example, because people come in and you'd be like, well, what do we want to do for marketing? And the first thing, a consultant would ask is, well, what's your business? And as soon as they know your business, they'll say, okay, well, we're not just going to do print marketing. We're also going to do online internet marketing. We're going to do social networking. We're going to do CSS code. We're going to do print. We're going to do radio. We're going to do TV, and a consultant has all of these different options available. And that's what makes them a professional. And so that consultant can really just take that idea and the concept and how much money is available and say, okay, well, here's the best strategy for what you have and what you're trying to accomplish. And so that's what a consultant will do, who's a professional in the marketing industry. So somebody who doesn't really know marketing will not necessarily do that. They'll basically say, oh, you know what, forget all the other marketing. The internet is the way to go. We just got to get you set up on a Facebook site and you're going to be like flying. You'll be rich beyond your dreams. That's kind of like a one-sided thing. And what's funny is you actually watch some of the online marketing, and that's what people say. But instantly you can say, well, because you're not actually opening up this full spectrum of options and possibilities, and you're saying this is the one way, this is the only way, instantly they're not really in their truth, and you can actually see the innocence that they have and the lack of professionalism and the lack of understanding about their actual field that they're in. And so when you start to understand this Formula for Truth, not only does it help you understand how to open yourself up to other people and other concepts and start valuing people more than information, it also helps you to be able to really detect the truth from the bullshit. In other words, people kind of like marketing or saying one thing and not being open to everything, you instantly know that they don't have that level of professionalism. So, that's a really, really powerful feature of it right there. The real big point of it, though, is once you start to understand this Formula for Truth, all of a sudden you'll listen to your own language and you'll be like, oh yeah, that's the way, forget everything else, screw it, this is the way, this is the only way, this is where we're going. And instantly your brain goes, oh, this is against that Formula for Truth because I'm stuck in one vibration. And if I'm stuck in one vibration, I'm always going to get the exact same results, and success comes from truth. Success comes from opening up options. That's where the most amount of success is, and it's success in business, it's success in relationships. And the really interesting thing about the formula for truth is that when you ground it down, it actually looks like an individual neuron. And so if you start cutting down the amount of options that you have, you're essentially cutting down the amount of, neuroreceptors and terminals, which is essentially how many connections that neuron has. So if you reduce the amount of connections in the neuron, you don't get as much energy firing through it. And if you don't have enough amplitude, you'll never get a gamma wave that fires, because a gamma wave requires a certain amount of amplitude in order to produce a gamma wave. So if you don't have enough receptors that are open or enough possibilities, and if you don't have enough options that you can apply yourself, you'll never ever generate a gamma wave in that neuron, which means that neuron itself is separate. And that neuron will never actually convert itself into light or transform itself or harness its true potential. And then you understand, well, if your neuron's actually lagging, then that's a sickness, because your neurons link up with cells in the body. They link in with organs. They link in with muscle fibers. And so depending on what neurons have been suppressed and shut down because your own belief systems, it will equally shut down parts of your body as well. So, maybe your sense of sight, might drop and your eyes get fuzzy. Maybe your stomach doesn't produce, or your liver doesn't produce the right type of acids or in the right quantities for your stomach to digest, because you've shut out these ideas and concepts, shutting down actual, the amount of neural connections taking place with the region of your brain that controls that.
Which comes to mind, the saying of when your body is in dis-ease, or your mindset is in it creates disease in your body.
Yeah, and it really just comes down to us being judgmental and causing separation from people and valuing information more than people. And if you look at a person is like encyclopedias of information. And if you value information more than people, you're essentially saying you value your own belief systems, and that's what people say is ego, the value of your own belief systems over top of somebody else or over top of a person. And so that's what the formula for truth is it's a very simple construct to help you understand how to open your brain. And so what we added in with this Formula for Truth course is about 1,500 YouTube videos of, just outlandish videos that are designed to make you think bigger. And it doesn't matter if the information's true or not true. It's there to break the mold of your actual brain, and it's there to break the mold of your preconceived idea and notion of reality, to open your brain up to the possibility. And when you do that, something amazing starts to happen. When you open up to all those possibilities, you're opening up to your own spirit, that energy, that potential energy, that collective. You're opening up to it. And when you do this, you start to get these little energy surges. And I'm not the only one who ever got them just because my brain injury. People get these energy surges all the time. I mean, we were talking about you get them, right?
Yeah. It's very overwhelming at times, but
well, and that's that's what happens. That's why we open ourselves up to the possibilities, so we get these energy surges come through. And when they come through, all of a sudden our brain says, because our brain is the one that knows our goal. This is my goal. This is what I want to accomplish. This is where I want to go. This is where I want to live. I have no clue how to make this happen or how to get there. So I'm just going to open up to unlimited possibility. And then all of a sudden you get these energy surges. And it rips through your brain, and all of a sudden it's like, go here, do this. And all of a sudden you start getting these instructions from your own body. But it's not just from your own body. It's from the intelligence of the universe giving you the instructions on how to find your way through this world to make your dreams happen.
Funny you say that. I come across you in probably around early 2009. Started sleeping on some of your Sacred G technology. I then started getting very strong, clear messages that I had to put myself in another country, which happened to be Peru. And started, a lot of my artwork was, very Peruvian type where I just walk up to a canvas and start painting, and the messages were very loud and clear, and I actually ended up going to Peru in September of 2009, approximately, 2 weeks after my father's death, and I had the most amazing spiritual experience over there. I felt like I belonged there. I found my sitting in life, I guess.
Wow. Yeah, that's how it happens. When you open up those channels and you listen, you get the magic.
I had a similar one, but during the time I didn't actually travel there, but with my Mayan artwork just rumbled out of me. Things that I figured I started back then but were only carved in stone and had lost their color, I recolorized and brought them back to life.
Mm-hmm. Your artwork is amazing, Chris.
And I don't know why I was doing it particularly, but I keep coming across these things, especially on Facebook, where somebody will bring up a certain subject and I'll have the picture to complement it instantly there. Yeah.
Well, once you start doing these processes where you open up to possibility, that's where the magic starts happening. That's where the energy comes through, and that's like the biggest first part is to get out of your own way. And you've heard that before. It's really just saying, I need to clear out this sense of self and open up to this collective possibility.
Yeah, and recognize your stoppers.
Yeah.
What are your stoppers? What are your fears? And start facing them.
Yeah, and it's the collective sense that says, hey, go over here now. Because the collective is looking at the whole world. It's looking at all the people in the planet. It's looking at the long-term visions, the short-term visions. It's looking at all the individual little things that you've always wanted to do through your life. And it's putting them all together into this sequence that's completely customized for you and only can be done by that collective state. And so then when you actually listen to it, you're essentially listening to your own brain saying, hey, this is what you want. These are the steps to go get it. Now you just have to take those steps. And so it turns on this coaching system that literally gives you that intelligence of the world. It gives you the intelligence of the collective.
Yeah, I very much agree there. Can we also talk about the crystal skulls that you have as a product on your website? I was quite, I saw the photo of you with this like huge big crystal skull on your tummy, like just showing, I'm assuming showing its size.
Yeah, that's his name's Nyn, Nyn, and he's 58 pounds of pure quartz crystal, clear quartz. And he's just an amazing alien crystal skull. He actually looks just like the one from the Indiana Jones movie, which that whole movie was about the actual the value. The treasure was information. The treasure was knowledge. And we actually found him at a crystal show in Denver, Colorado. And we walked by this alien crystal skull, and I was like, "Whoa, look at that!" And I was like, "Isn't that cool?" And so we're kind of just like hanging out with it, and there's a whole bunch of other crystal skulls on there, but nothing like this huge alien crystal skull. And all of a sudden, the woman, the woman turns around. She was talking to somebody. She instantly turns around right in the middle of her conversation with this person. My body stands up, and I was like, I have to bring this home today. What kind of deal can we work out? And it just came out of my mouth. Like it just happened. And I was like, whoa, because I looked at the price tag and it was expensive. It's like it's like 60 pounds of quartz, right? And all carved out into this amazing alien crystal skull. It's not cheap. So so I'm like, and I'm shocked by what just came out of my mouth. I have no idea where it came from. And I'm kind of like, all of a sudden I'm reactive and I'm like panicking, like what's going on here? And I'm like trying to talk myself out of getting it, but there's this like momentum that's just pushing me towards it and I can't stop it. So I go over to a pendulum And, I play with pendulum for a lot of years, and I understand how they kind of work, and you can kind of also manipulate them and get them to, not through actually changing the way that you swing it, but just by changing your focus and intention, you can make it spin however you want. And so, I did the first initial thing, is my name Cory, yes or no, and it shows me yes, and I'm like, should I buy this crystal skull and take it home? And it's like, yes, and I'm like, no. And I'm trying to make it go no, and it's going back and forth, which was yes. And I'm trying to like make it go circles and clockwise and counterclockwise, and it's not going. And I start saying other questions in my head and out loud, and it does not change. And I'm like freaking out because now I'm like focusing on it, and it will not change like directions. It's still locked on that yes. And so I manually start like spinning it in circles, and then I just sit there, and it only takes like 4 or 5, oscillations, and it's back to yes. And I'm like, this thing's overriding me. This is freaking crazy. I never experienced that before, right? It was it was really weird. And so I'm like, I'm walking back, and I'm like, because it was at the same table, so I'm walking around to the other corner where the alien crystal skull is, and I'm like panicked, and I'm like going, no, and I look over at my girl, Skyra, and I'm like, should I get this thing? She's like, oh yeah, we have to. And I'm like, you're not supposed to say that. And I was like, I go over, I look at it, and I'm ready to turn around and walk away, and I'm like, I gotta get out of here. This is too intense. And all of a sudden, my head turns right towards her, and it says, I really need to take this home today. What kind of deal that we can work with? This is what I do. And my mouth just started talking, and she's like, yeah, we can work a deal. Let's do it. And I was freaking out. It was really weird. So that was like the start of it. And I never really experienced anything like that, not with like crystals and stuff. I've had some cool experiences, but nothing like that was doing like a whole override. And so we take it home, yeah. And I'm freaking out, and I've got like buyer's remorse. I'm thinking about how I can sell this thing on eBay, as like the real like Indiana Jones skull and stuff, right? And
gosh, you even took him into some of your training classes.
What's that?
You even took him into some of your training classes. I mean,
oh yeah,
I saw a definite attachment.
Well, next thing you know, I go in there, and I'm just sitting on the bed panicking, and I don't know what happened, but all of a sudden I started bawling, and it was like I could see like images of my dad and stuff where like money was more important, with like, because he had to work to make rent and stuff, but like images of where I was like, why is money more important than me, and all this other stuff, right? And next thing you know, I'm bawling. And all of a sudden, I've got my arms around this thing like it's my friend, and I'm like telling him all about my friends I grew up with, and like having this whole sentimental conversation. And my brain kicked in. It's like, what's going on here? And I'm like, what's happened? What just happened, right? And I start freaking out. So I go to bed that night, and all of a sudden, I see the skull in my dream, and he takes me down into the earth, and he shows me how the whole Earth's crust is made up of quartz crystal. And this quartz is actually monitoring every single interaction that's happening on the planet, from all of our thoughts, our emotions, our interactions. Everything electronic is being recorded by this quartz. And it's like, and it shows me, he's like, this is where the grid is. This is where everything happens. This is the actual collective right here. It's inside the quartz. It's inside the earth. And then, I had this one vision one time of, I looked directly into the sun, and my eyes focused in, and because I was in so much energy, my light was, high. And so my eyes weren't bothered by the sun, and my eyes zoomed in, and there was a whole civilization that was inside there with crystal palaces, and, there's people walking, and there's like grass, and there's like this whole civilization inside the sun. And I was like, the sun gods, and I was like super stoked, because they are actually the sun gods. They're these beings who exist inside the sun. It's just that their senses and their bodies radiate light. And so he brought this memory up of this vision inside the sun, And then all of a sudden he connected it to the core of the Earth, and there was a communication happening from the sun to the molten core of the Earth. And then from the core of the Earth, I saw these waves come out. And these waves went through this quartz crystal and then out through the crust, back out to the atmosphere where they bounced off, the atmospheric shell of the Earth, and then bounced back in through the quartz and then back in through the molten sun and back or molten Earth, the core, and then back to the sun. And then it showed me, and then it started showing me how any of those waves that are coming in or out are accessible by these beings inside the sun, and it's a whole monitoring system. So they're using the actual information that's being stored from the quartz, and they've got computer systems that can see anything and everything that's happening on the planet at any given moment, and they can see it from any angle. So they can be looking at you from up above, like to the right, and they change the setting and it goes up above and to the left, and there was this entire virtual system that they had access to that literally told them every single thing that was happening on the planet. And it was recording it.
Bashar says that you hold on to this, like two knoblets or something, like crystal knoblets within some of the crystal skulls, or I don't know. But he was saying if you put your finger on each of those knoblets, your thumb and maybe your middle finger, and within 15 seconds you would have a download.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I woke up from this dream freaking out. Because it showed me where all the actual, where the collective was stored, our connection with the actual sun gods and goddesses, which is what's written about in history and even on cave walls and in all these different cultures. And it actually said, hey, this is actually real. This is how all the communication happens. And so when they want to, you hear about people who invented something, but then you really get into the story and you actually find out that there was a bunch of people inventing that same technology or same object, all around the world. There's people who were working on it. It's just somebody did it fastest, and patented it and claimed that they're the ones who developed it. But then they started showing me how when there's new technology or new systems, they literally put them inside of the core of the Earth, and then it expands out through the quartz crystal. And the quartz determines who has the capabilities to actually make these projects happen or not. And that's what really directs where all this information goes and the new types of technologies. So the technology is sent in towards the actual core of the Earth where it spirals out to a whole bunch of people all at the exact same time. So nobody's actually really inventing or creating or anything. We're actually unlocking information that's being given to us, for an actual evolutionary cycle.
Yeah, well, a great example of that is the cement mixture used that they've now found in Pompeii, where the Germans were supposed to have created or invented that particular mixture in the 1940s, but now they've found it in Pompeii, which is, it contradicts. Yeah, that happens because it goes all over the place. And what I started finding out was it's not necessarily just a time. Well, there is a time constraint for some stuff, but there's also a development constraint as well. So, the time-related stuff is when there's a certain amount of people that are already or all capable to make it happen. And then, which is a development model, but then all of a sudden it's when that time hits. And so there's a timer there. But also on an individual scale, there's just simply our own development model. Do we have enough information and the capacity to understand what the answer is that we're looking for? And if we don't have the capacity to understand the answer, we don't get the answer we're looking for. We get the answer that will lead us to the answer that we're looking for. And thus, solution. We've got Freeman Jack here. Cory, I'd like you to welcome him into the call. He's got a lot of questions. He's got a lot of questions to ask you.
Good evening, good morning, Cory. I don't know quite which end of the day you are. I'm sitting here in London, and it's currently 2 a.m.
Awesome. It's 6:30 p.m. for me.
Excellent.
And it's 1:30 p.m. in Australia on Sunday.
Well, I'm the mad one up in the wee small hours then. Cory, it's wonderful to get the chance to speak to you. As Ronny so rightly points out, I have so many things to talk to you about. Unfortunately, we could fill an entire show with just a few questions that I've stumbled across while you've been speaking. But one thing that I'd really like to take you into was you were speaking about having been sort of shown the game plan and having found yourself without the faculties with which to deal with it, and therefore set about trying to avail yourself with the means to be able to understand the plan, if you were. Yeah. This resonates very strongly with an experience that I had, that one of my sons have had, and I've also heard another person describe a similar sort of experience. We call these voices the resonator. It's almost like a vibration. It's so low, but very deeply, softly spoken, well-meaning, sort of out-of-body voices that kind of slide. I mean, for me, it was almost like a book. It was like a big bound volume. And I remember sort of turning a page and just being presented with the kind of hieroglyphics, or the equivalent of hieroglyphics. I certainly couldn't understand even the symbols being used, let alone the sort of concepts being shown. Yeah. And I was being invited to join the sort of program, to join the research. Yeah. And I was being shown the book as, you know what I mean, could I help? And I remember looking at these symbols and just shrugging my shoulders in dismay and thinking, well, I can't even make head or tail of the symbols that you're using, let alone know what it is that you're... And I remember this deep, booming, hearty kind of Father Christmas-esque laugh, like a barrel belly laugh, coming out of the ether. And just
I know that laugh that you're talking about.
And just this real benign sense of... wanting us to do the right thing and wanting us to achieve a point where we would be able to understand the symbols in the book. I actually wonder now, if I was to return to that place, if maybe some of those symbols would now actually have meaning to me. At that time it was complete gibberish to me, but in my voyages since then, in the 20 years since then, a lot has come my way. But I'm glad to hear sorry to interrupt. Have you tried to reinvent the symbols that you see? Because I've tried this a couple of times, Freeman, where coming out, as soon as I know I'm in conscious state, so to speak, I try and go back to that closing, I guess, and Cory would call it closing of 10. Where you then try and reproduce that symbol on paper, maybe. I can't say that I have. I mean, this was a single incident, and funnily enough, it was one of those pet emails that we were describing on our show recently. Just a momentary absence, matter of a few seconds, and I didn't actually lose consciousness in the kind of here and now. I think it may have been connected with a mushroom trip as well. I may have been. On magic mushrooms at the time as well, which certainly seems to be one of the I think that, again, there's something else that I wanted to talk to Cory about, whether he would I be right in thinking that the psilocybin mushroom actually activates the DMT release in a kind of a roundabout as a secondary.
Yeah, actually, I actually did a 2-hour video about how you can take the energy from psychedelic compounds and train your brain to convert that energy into gamma waves, which spikes all your energy levels. And that's actually the key way that you have an in-body experience where all of a sudden all your senses activate and you're like seeing everything with your eyes.
I have a 20-year-old psychonaut sleeping upstairs who is going to kill me tomorrow. He has watched all of your videos and is endeavouring to practice drug-free psychonautism. I suppose you would describe it as meditation, breathing exercises and intellectual exercises based on your kind of approach, I suppose.
Well, yeah, and he actually
seems to be getting an awfully long way with it. I mean, he's tried both ways. He's tried sort of with ethnogens and without. And he's now describing pushing the parameters further without than with, just simply by understanding what the energetic nature of what he was receiving from the ethnogens did.
Well, once you get to a certain point, you realize that any of the actual psychedelic compounds, all they are is energy amplifiers. So just producing a massive amount of energy and then
harmonizers, possibly.
Yeah, and if you can convert that energy, then you can open up some pretty profound spiritual experiences. But if you haven't done the actual real work on the ground without the substances, from doing the training and the activations and training your brain and the education, if you haven't done that, then your brain can't really turn it over.
Well, I think it's McKenna that said psychedelics both produce and require change, and I think that's where a lot of people get into problems with psychedelics, is that they produce the change, the ethnogen produces the change, but then the person is resistant to that change and tries to stay where they were before they took the ethnogen.
Yeah,
the ethnogen requires change, and I think that ties in very much with what you're saying about needing to act on these inspirations, I suppose, these insights.
Yeah.
It's no good having the insight on its own. In fact, that can be quite a dangerous thing because it stifles the flow.
Well, and you can do too much of them where your regular reality here becomes so distorted because of your higher potential reality, but your body's not capable of actually harnessing or grounding that energy. And so what happens is you start to become very distorted because this reality doesn't, it stops making sense. Because you haven't really upgraded your body with the realization.
I actually come from the complete opposite tangent, where in fact I'm a temporal lobe epileptic, and most of my adult life has actually been spent trying to cling to this world, to ordinary reality, while the non-ordinary world of non-ordinary reality knocks heavily at my door. So it's really been a matter of kind of these moments for me have been more sprung upon me. Certainly, I haven't done a great deal to avoid them.
One of the things that we talked about the first way method to open up the brain to get that energy to come through. But the second way, or the second thing that you have to do is once you actually open up your brain to that potential and the energy starts to move through your body, you have to build your body up to handle that energy. And so that's where it really comes down to health, training your body, getting fit, being active, developing
avoiding
really
alcohol,
solid muscles. Yeah, and it's really about getting super healthy.
This was another thing that struck me earlier in the interview was one of the places that you were going is something that and you didn't quite go where I am, which is just general breathing and posture.
Yeah.
It's something that really isn't spoken about, greatly promoted, but I know for an absolute fact that posture is related to things like depression. Mm-hmm. If you watch somebody's body posture when they're in a depressive state and watch somebody when they're in an effusive state, you'll see the posture of your body that you need to force upon yourself if you find yourself within that kind of energy state. And I think that the body posture defines the kind of the shape of the body energetic.
Yeah, and using body posture alone just as a diagnostic. So, you take where you're normally, like the way you normally stand or the way you normally sit, and then you look in the mirror and you get your, that real sharp, solid posture. You hold that posture for 1 or 2 minutes and your body will start shaking because all the weak areas in your body that are preventing you from being in that posture will automatically reveal themselves. But then it also tells you what you need to go work out, what part of your body you need to train to get to that perfect posture that you're looking for.
I think that possibly it's a matter of simply expressing yourself into your natural form. I do very little forced exercise, although I do lug big lumps of wood around and chainsaws and drive big chunky cars and motorbikes and that's what I live a fairly active lifestyle, but I do no actual directed exercise. And yet, as a 47-year-old man, I'm almost entirely as limber as I was as a teenager. And, have incredibly good health regardless of paying very little actual attention to it. I'm vegetarian, I'm teetotal, I don't use narcotics. I use psychedelics, but not narcotics.
Well, that's interesting to know.
Never particularly private about it. I must inquire as well as to the landscapes that you find yourself in these prolonged DMT states that you were entered in due to your accident. Could you describe the actual the character of the landscapes? Were there sort of archetypes? Were there regular landscapes where you often return to the same place?
No, it was pretty much a new place, like, every time.
Okay, that's been my experience as well.
Yeah, because the universe is so big, they'll never simulate the same reality more than once, typically. Unless you actually
the same reality. I like that one a lot, Cory. You and me are definitely reading from the same songbook here.
So, but one of the characteristics that I think is so eminent is that light comes from the color. Like, the light is contained within color, rather than the way that our eyes normally perceive of, like, light bouncing off an object and hitting our eyes. I think the one major characteristic is that light is generated from within itself. It comes from within the color, and it makes the color look completely different than what color normally looks like.
Oh, I see what you're saying. You're saying that everything is illuminated from within.
Yes. Yeah, it totally illuminates itself.
Yeah, no, that's one of my most profound experiences turned out to be a trip in time and not in space. I actually stayed in the same village but slipped about 200 years in time and was walking abroad in this village, and it was an early November night, and I found myself walking in the village on what appeared to still be the same early November night, but now 200 years in the past. And one of the things that struck me was that the first thing that occurred to me was, blimey, it's an early frost. It's only early November. Normally we don't get a frost till sort of nearly December. And then I'm sort of looking more closely at the frost, and I realise that it's not really frosty. It's more that everything's kind of sparkling. And it was, as you say, everything was kind of illuminated from within, and that would be the definitive part of all of the various experiences.
That reminds me of when I was looking up into the sun and I saw the crystal palaces, and I was like, well, how do you go to the bathroom? That's one of the first things that I thought was, like, how do you go to the bathroom? Because you can see through everything.
My son in a vision met a light being, and the meeting would have been strange enough if it weren't for the fact that my son was entirely dumbfounded by the fact that this light being was completely jealous of his solidity. He was drinking a cup of tea at the time, and this light being was just marvelling at the fact that he could move this enormous lump of mass of a cup filled with liquid from the table to his lips, and was incredibly jealous of that capability. Because for them, it would require almost a universe of energy to move so much.
That's a pre-creation a vision before we actually had a duality system. So it's different because you have a light body, but it has no actual mass, and so you can play. I think the thing that struck me about a lot of this is the thing that strikes me about a lot of these experiences is the sense of incredulity, and that was the thing that was the most self-evident about that particular time trip, and loads of my other experiences. And my son described exactly the same with that one, was that you're greeted with this experience that holds this mammoth truth, and yet it's so out beyond your event horizon, beyond anything that you ever considered yourself, that it strikes you with incredulity. You just ridicule it to yourself until you then reconsider it later and then go, oh my God, what did I just experience there? You know what I mean?
Well, I'm saying, oh my God, you guys are talking about an experience I had only a week or so ago where I could see myself bring the cup, the vessel of liquid to my mouth. I was shaking it all over the bed. The bed was like not wet. And then instantly I found myself next to my full cup of liquid next to my bed, so that realization of knowing that I wasn't within my own normality of state was a really funky experience, and I wasn't under the influence of anything at that time.
Well, I mean, this is the other thing as well, is that one of the reasons why I don't particularly hold with ethnogens as a particular route to these experiences that Cory and I are describing is that nearly all of my experiences have actually come through the temporal lobe epilepsy and not through the pursuit of vast quantities of ethnogens, although I have pursued vast quantities of ethnogens. I mean, McKenna comes out with there are old psychonauts and bold psychonauts. Well, I really shouldn't be this old if that's the case.
Well, and epilepsy is a neuron, that had its
I think we're possibly talking about entering into this gamma state, aren't we?
Well,
almost spontaneously.
It's because the coding around the that sends the electrical charge, it gets burnt out. And so when all of a sudden a signal goes through that neuron, it electrocutes your whole brain. When it electrocutes your brain, everything starts spiking to gamma levels, where your brain starts producing gamma, and you shake because your brain is taking all the energy that's being generated in your brain, and it's pumping it through the cerebellum into your body, so you're actually shaking off the energy. It's a circuit breaker.
I don't suppose you've heard of Nick Gracie and his work on the inner jellyfish. Because he actually describes us all as walking robots carrying around our inner jellyfish, and describes exactly what you just said there. He says that basically the jellyfish rescinds energy control to the rest of the body and withdraws it to the core organism, which is our inner jellyfish, basically our central nervous system, which floats around in our spinal column in its bit of salt water that it's carried with it out of the sea.
Well, and that's neat because anytime that we have a neurotransmitter that becomes like a trauma, or it puts too much energy out, or a terminal, which is basically what excretes the neurotransmitter, as soon as the energy becomes too much, there's an actual switch, and the terminal, which connects to the other neuroreceptor, they'll separate from each other. So every time that terminal goes to send out a signal, it won't send it into the actual neuroreceptor. It sends it into the actual cerebral fluid.
Yeah, and so you have the brain.
Yeah, so there's actually two different states that are contained within the brain. One of them is where you're in the consciousness of the fluid, which is a combination of everything that hasn't really been resolved or dealt with. And then there's a second one where you're actually in the neurons themselves traveling. And so when you actually get into a high energy state through either a massive gamma burst in your own brain, which triggers DMT, or through psychedelic compounds, when you're in that space, you can actually feel yourself traveling through tunnels and tubes and vortexes.
Absolutely, been there plenty of times.
Yeah, and you feel yourself all of a sudden stop, and then you're isolated in this one state or one reality, and then all of a sudden, as soon as you learn your stuff, you're off to the next. You're shooting through another tunnel, going to that next space.
Yeah. And almost like you can perceive the data points that are of interest to you in the neural mass, and target those, and almost travel there at the speed of thought. I've also ended up in actual landscapes that I've been able to do that in as well, where I've been in a landscape and perhaps finding myself standing and chatting to somebody, and at the end of the conversation I don't sort of walk off, I think off, and the next place is wherever has just struck my interest, and I'll be there at the speed of thought, but still have the experience of the travelling. There's still the perception of the landscape sort of passing as such.
Yeah. And that's those two, the being in the consciousness of the cerebral fluid or in the actual neurons themselves. Those are the two main operating systems for the human body. When you're in the actual neurotransmitters and you can feel yourself traveling from point to point and feel the tunnels that you're going through, that's your highest state. And I kind of call it like a high gamma. Because gamma is essentially your operating system. So you got a low gamma, which is where you're in the cerebral fluid, and then you got the high gamma where you're actually inside the neurons and traveling. And it's a completely different state, a totally different reality when you're inside the actual neurons compared to the cerebral fluid. But it's cool because that's where the consciousness and the conscious awareness is. It's actually, in both parts of the brain, which I find pretty fascinating.
Well, it's been all of my experiences in what I would describe as non-ordinary reality in the kind of other realm that have essentially presented me with proofs that have been so undeniable they have forced me to question everything that I once held to be true. I grew up studying rational fundamentalist science. I was studying Einstein at 11. I mean, I knew the SI model inside and out, back to front, and would argue it till I was blue in the face. And then suddenly I was presented with these experiences through non-ordinary reality that completely contradicted the SI model.
Yeah. Yeah, because...
It's probably taken me, the last 25 years to piece together some sort of resemblance of a normal model that I can now refer to when I'm trying to construct my impressions about reality, because it twists them so much. I can only imagine that your experiences in the DMT realm must be just that plus sort of to the 10 to the power of 10, perhaps.
Well, it definitely definitely distorted my reality. That's for sure.
Okay.
Hey, Cory, can I ask you a question? What blood type are you?
I'm AB negative.
Wow.
No RH there, I'm afraid, Ronny.
You're truly rare.
Unique.
Very.
Oh, except for the other 6.6 million of you in the 72 souls.
Guys, we're going to take a short break soon. You guys are welcome to stay on. We've got the go-ahead if we want to extend the show. So if you guys are all right with that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we can. Yeah, I'm up for extending a little bit.
Okay, cool. So, Truth War, if you would like to introduce us to one of your amazing tunes, that'd be awesome. And great show, guys.
Oh, there we go.